Hello there, and welcome to Biology for Sleep, a place where curiosity slows down and science becomes something you can rest with. This channel is built for evenings, late hours, and quiet moments, when the day has finally loosened its grip and your mind is ready to drift somewhere gentler. Here, ideas unfold slowly. Nothing rushes you. There is no pressure to keep up. Every topic is approached with patience, clarity, and care, so that learning can feel more like settling in than staying alert. Tonight's journey is about something deeply familiar, yet often unexplained. It is about the strange ability humans have to feel what does not belong to them. The heaviness in your chest when someone else is sad. The sudden warmth when you see relief on another face. The way a movie scene can tighten your throat, even though nothing in your own life has changed. This capacity has a name. It is empathy. Empathy is not just kindness. It is not simply being polite or considerate. It is a biological process, rooted in the nervous system, shaped by evolution, and refined by experience. It is the reason another person's pain can register inside your own body. It is why tension spreads across a room, why laughter moves through a crowd, why a single expression can shift your mood without a word being spoken. In everyday life, empathy feels automatic. It arrives without effort. You do not decide to feel it. You notice it only after it has already happened. A coworker walks into the room carrying exhaustion, and somehow your own energy dips. A stranger cries on public transport, and your chest tightens even though you will never meet them. A friend shares good news, and something in your body lifts before your thoughts catch up. This ability to echo the internal states of others is so natural that it often goes unnoticed. It blends into the background of daily life, quietly shaping reactions, decisions, and relationships. But beneath that ordinary experience lies a complex system involving perception, memory, movement, hormones, and neural circuits that evolved long before language or culture. Empathy did not emerge so that humans could be polite. It emerged because social creatures needed a way to stay aligned. Long before people lived in cities or built tools, survival depended on groups. In those groups, being able to sense distress, danger, or readiness in others increased the chances that everyone made it through the day. A nervous glance could signal threat. A sudden stillness could mean danger nearby. A cry could mean injury. Responding quickly required more than logic. It required resonance. Your nervous system is built to resonate. This does not mean that empathy is always gentle. It can be heavy. It can overwhelm. It can linger long after the moment has passed. It can blur boundaries between your inner world and someone else's. Many people carry emotions that did not begin with them. They absorb stress from rooms, sorrow from stories, tension from voices. Over time, this can become tiring, confusing, even painful. Yet empathy is also what allows connection to feel real. It is the reason a conversation can feel warm rather than mechanical. It is why comfort matters. It is how trust forms. Without empathy, social life would collapse into transaction and routine. With it, even brief interactions can carry meaning. If you're listening in the quiet of evening, in a bedroom, on a couch, or under a blanket, your body is already doing what it always does. It is scanning tone. It is tracking rhythm. It is responding to the pace of another human voice. Even now, your nervous system is adjusting to a presence that is not physically there. This is not imagination. It is biology. That ability is what tonight is about. In the next stretch of time, the focus will stay on how empathy actually works, not as a vague feeling, not as a moral concept, but as a process unfolding inside the brain and body. How perception becomes sensation, how observation becomes experience, how another person's state enters your own. This will move slowly. It will stay grounded. Every idea will be built from simple cause and effect, nothing mystical, nothing symbolic, just the ordinary machinery of a social nervous system doing what it evolved to do. If this space feels helpful, calming, or simply comfortable, a quiet show of support helps it reach others who might need the same kind of pause. A small action keeps this place alive. From here, the path turns inward, toward the mechanisms that allow one mind to register another, toward the way your brain maps faces, posture, and tone, toward the systems that blur the line between observation and participation, toward the reason another person's experience can become part of your own internal landscape. Empathy begins quietly. It does not announce itself. It starts with perception, and that is where this journey continues. Empathy begins long before anyone names it. It starts in the simplest acts of perception. A face tightens, a voice drops, shoulders rise, your nervous system notices before your thoughts do. Muscles in your own body respond. Breathing adjusts. Something inside you shifts. This is not imagination, and it is not deliberate. It is a reflex built into the structure of a social brain. When people talk about empathy, they often describe it as kindness or emotional intelligence. Those ideas sit on top of something much more basic. Empathy is the capacity of one nervous system to register the internal state of another and partially reproduce it. It is not a moral quality. It is a biological function. It operates whether or not you approve of the person in front of you. It appears even when you wish it would not. You see someone wince, and a small echo of that discomfort appears in your own body. You hear laughter, and your breathing changes. You watch tension in another person's posture, and your muscles tighten in response. None of this requires reflection. It happens in fractions of a second. The mind likes to believe it is in control of experience, but empathy bypasses conscious thought. It does not ask for permission. It moves from perception to sensation without stopping to explain itself. This is why empathy can feel surprising. You walk into a room feeling fine and leave feeling unsettled. You watch a brief news clip and carry the weight of it for hours. You listen to someone speak and absorb their stress even when nothing in your own life has changed. The source of the feeling is external, but the experience is internal. It feels like it belongs to you, even when it does not. That quiet echo is what empathy actually is. It is not sympathy. Sympathy involves evaluation. You notice that someone is struggling and you feel concern. Empathy happens earlier. It is the nervous system aligning itself with another state. Sympathy is a response. Empathy is a resonance. This resonance is not perfect. You do not become the other person. You do not feel exactly what they feel. What occurs is a partial mapping. Your brain builds a rough internal model of what it observes. It uses memory, association, and bodily feedback to simulate the state it perceives. The result is an approximation, shaped by your own history and physiology. That is why two people can witness the same event and feel different things. Empathy is not a direct transfer. It is an interpretation built on your own internal library of experiences. Still, the mechanism is powerful. It is strong enough to shape mood, behavior, and memory. It influences decisions without announcing itself. It guides social interaction in ways that often go unnoticed. In early human groups, this capacity had clear survival value. A member of the group who could quickly register fear in others had an advantage. A sudden stillness or change in posture could signal danger. An infant who cried could trigger care without language. A wounded member could draw attention through visible distress. Groups that responded efficiently to these cues were more likely to survive. Empathy therefore became embedded in the nervous system. It did not evolve for comfort. It evolved for coordination. Modern life still runs on this same machinery. The context has changed, but the brain has not. Your body reacts to expressions on screens as if they were happening in the room. Voices through speakers still carry emotional information. Written words can trigger physiological responses. The system does not distinguish between physical presence and symbolic representation. It responds to patterns. This is why stories have such power. When you read about someone struggling, Your body often mirrors that struggle. When a character succeeds, something in you lifts. The nervous system responds to narrative cues as if they were direct experience. Empathy is therefore not a soft skill, it is a form of perception. Vision detects light, hearing detects vibration, empathy detects internal states. It does this by linking external signals to internal representations. Facial expressions become associated with specific patterns of muscle tension, breathing, and visceral sensation. Over time, the brain learns that a certain tilt of the head corresponds with uncertainty, that a certain tightening around the eyes often accompanies sadness, that a certain tempo of speech reflects agitation. These associations are built gradually, they are refined through repeated exposure. Infants begin this process in the first months of life. Long before they understand language, they track faces, they respond to tone, they adjust their own expressions in response to others. This is not taught. It is an automatic developmental pathway. As the brain matures, these early patterns become more complex. Memory layers onto perception. Past experiences colour interpretation. A raised voice may mean excitement in one context and danger in another. The nervous system learns to weigh these cues based on history. Empathy is therefore both innate and shaped. The capacity exists in everyone, but its expression varies. Culture influences which signals are emphasized. Family environments teach which emotions are safe to notice. Personal experiences alter sensitivity. Some people become highly attuned to subtle shifts. Others learn to dampen their responsiveness. Neither is accidental. Both reflect adaptation. In unpredictable or unsafe environments, heightened sensitivity can be protective. Reading the room becomes a survival strategy. In stable settings, too much sensitivity can become exhausting. The nervous system may learn to reduce input to preserve balance. Empathy is not evenly distributed across all situations. It fluctuates with stress, fatigue, and context. When you are overwhelmed, your capacity to resonate with others diminishes. Resources turn inward. The brain prioritizes self-regulation over social attunement. This is not a flaw, it is a trade-off. Likewise, when you feel safe and rested, empathy expands, attention widens, subtle cues become more noticeable, emotional bandwidth increases. This variability explains why people sometimes appear kind in one moment and distant in another. The underlying system is dynamic. It responds to internal state as much as external input. Empathy also has boundaries. It is selective. It tends to be stronger toward those perceived as similar or familiar. This bias has evolutionary roots. Early groups were small. Recognizing and prioritizing in-group members improved survival. In modern contexts, this same bias can create distance between groups. The nervous system responds more readily to expressions it recognizes. Unfamiliar faces, languages, and customs can reduce automatic resonance. This does not mean empathy is absent. It means it requires more cognitive effort. Learning expands empathy by building new internal mappings. Exposure increases recognition. Stories reduce distance. Repetition trains the nervous system to associate new patterns with familiar states. This is why representation matters. It builds the internal vocabulary that empathy relies on. Despite its benefits, empathy is not always comfortable. Because it involves internal simulation, it can carry pain. Witnessing distress activates circuits associated with your own discomfort. The body reacts as if it were directly involved. In small doses, this motivates care. In large doses, it becomes burdensome. Continuous exposure to suffering, whether through direct contact or media, can saturate the system. The brain cannot distinguish between lived and observed stress at a physiological level. It accumulates. This accumulation can lead to emotional fatigue. The nervous system remains in a heightened state. Recovery becomes harder. People in caregiving professions often experience this effect. Their empathy does not shut off when work ends. The echo continues. Understanding empathy as a biological process clarifies why boundaries matter. They are not signs of indifference. They are forms of regulation. Without limits, the system overloads. Empathy therefore exists in tension with self-preservation. It connects individuals, but it also exposes them. The nervous system must balance openness with stability. This balance is not fixed. It shifts across life. Children often experience empathy in raw form. They absorb emotion without filters. They cry when others cry. They laugh when others laugh. Over time, social rules teach modulation. Expression becomes controlled. Reaction becomes selective. Some adults retain high sensitivity. Others learn to compartmentalize. Neither outcome is purely chosen. Both emerge from interaction between biology and environment. Empathy is often framed as a virtue, but it is more accurate to view it as a tool. Like any tool, it can be used well or poorly. It can support connection or lead to overwhelm. It can guide understanding or create bias. What makes empathy distinctive is its immediacy. It operates before reasoning. It shapes perception itself. By the time you evaluate a situation, your body has already taken a position. This is why people sometimes say they feel something is wrong without knowing why. Their nervous system has detected incongruence. Tone does not match words. Posture does not match context. Micro-expressions signal tension. The conscious mind has not yet assembled an explanation, but the body has registered change. Empathy is therefore a form of early warning. It monitors the social environment continuously. It is also a bridge. It allows experiences to be shared without language. It enables coordination without instruction. It supports trust without contracts. When two people feel aligned, their nervous systems synchronize in subtle ways. Breathing patterns converge, speech rhythms adjust, posture mirrors. This alignment reduces uncertainty. It signals safety. In groups, this synchronization can scale. Crowds react together, energy spreads, silence settles. Emotional states propagate through networks of perception and response. This is not metaphor, it is measurable. Studies show that heart rates, breathing, and even neural activity can align during shared experiences. Music, storytelling, and ritual exploit this property. They create collective rhythm. Empathy underlies all of this. It is not a mysterious force, it is a coordination system. It evolved to reduce friction between minds. It allows separate organisms to function as a unit. At the same time, it preserves individuality. The echo is partial. You remain distinct. You can observe without fully absorbing. Regulation allows distance. Problems arise when regulation fails, when boundaries blur, when the echo becomes indistinguishable from origin. Understanding empathy as a system rather than a sentiment changes how it is managed. Instead of asking why someone feels too much or too little, attention shifts to how their nervous system has learned to tune input. Sensitivity is not weakness. Detachment is not cruelty. Both are strategies. The quiet echo that appears when you witness another's state is not accidental. It is the product of millions of years of social adaptation. It is the foundation of cooperation. It is the reason human groups can function at all. It is also the reason you sometimes carry feelings that did not begin with you. From here, the focus moves closer to the machinery itself. The next stretch will look at how the brain converts observation into sensation, how seeing becomes feeling, how a face becomes a state inside your own body. When your brain mirrors another person, it does not rely on imagination, it relies on circuitry. The transformation from observation to internal sensation happens through networks that link perception, movement, and feeling. These networks allow your nervous system to translate what it sees into a bodily state. The process begins the moment sensory information enters the brain. Light strikes the retina. Sound reaches the inner ear. Patterns of movement are registered. These signals travel through specialized pathways that identify faces, voices, posture, and motion. Long before meaning is assigned, the brain extracts structure. It detects tension in a jaw, a slump in shoulders, a tightening around the eyes. These patterns are then matched against stored representations. The brain asks, without conscious language, what does this configuration usually mean? It does this using distributed networks that connect visual areas with motor and emotional regions. One of the most important components in this system is a group of cells often referred to as mirror neurons. These neurons activate not only when you perform an action, but also when you observe someone else perform the same action. When you reach for a cup, a specific pattern of neural activity occurs. When you watch someone else reach for a cup, many of those same neurons fire. The brain does not merely record the sight, it simulates the action. This simulation is partial and automatic. You do not actually move your arm, but the internal representation of movement becomes active. The nervous system briefly occupies a state similar to the one required to perform the observed action. This mechanism extends beyond physical movement. It applies to expressions, posture, and vocal tone. Watching someone smile activates circuits associated with smiling. Hearing a strained voice activates patterns associated with vocal tension. Seeing pain activates regions involved in your own pain processing. The brain does not distinguish sharply between doing and seeing. It treats observation as a form of participation. This is how feeling without touch becomes possible. You do not need to experience an event directly for your nervous system to generate a response. The simulation creates a trace of the state inside you. This does not mean that you fully experience what the other person feels. The simulation is scaled. It is muted. It is shaped by your own history and physiology. But it is enough to register a direction, enough to shift your internal balance. This mirroring happens quickly. Within milliseconds, motor and emotional systems respond. The process occurs beneath awareness. By the time you consciously recognize that someone is upset, your body has already adjusted. Facial muscles may shift, breathing may change, heart rate may vary, muscle tone may increase. These changes are subtle. You rarely notice them, but they alter how the world feels. The brain uses these bodily signals to infer meaning. This is known as embodied cognition. Instead of reasoning abstractly about another's state, the nervous system samples its own internal response. It uses that response as information. If observing someone triggers a sense of heaviness, the brain interprets the situation as sad. If it triggers tension, the situation feels threatening. If it triggers warmth, it feels safe. In this way, understanding emerges from sensation rather than logic. This system develops early. Infants mirror expressions within days of birth. They stick out their tongues when they see tongues. They widen their eyes in response to widened eyes. These behaviors appear before language, before social rules, before deliberate imitation. The infant brain is building maps. It links what it sees to what it feels. It learns that certain shapes correspond to certain states. Over time, these maps become more precise. Caregivers play a central role. When a parent responds to an infant's distress with a calm voice and gentle movement, the infant's nervous system experiences regulation. The brain links that external pattern with internal settling. Later, seeing calm in others can produce similar effects. If early environments are unpredictable, the mapping changes. The brain learns to associate certain cues with threat. A raised voice may signal danger. A sudden movement may trigger alarm. The mirroring system becomes tuned toward vigilance. These patterns persist. They shape how easily resonance occurs and what form it takes. The mirroring process is not confined to vision. Sound carries emotional information through pitch, tempo, and rhythm. A slow, steady voice reduces arousal. A sharp, rapid voice increases it. These effects occur even when words are neutral. This is why tone matters more than content in many interactions. The nervous system responds to how something is said before it evaluates what is said. Touch also activates mirroring. Seeing someone wince when touched can trigger a similar response in your own somatosensory cortex. The brain area that processes touch becomes active even though no contact occurs. This explains why watching injuries in films can feel uncomfortable. The nervous system reacts as if the body were involved. The mirroring system therefore links perception to bodily readiness. It prepares the organism for coordinated response. In a group, this allows rapid alignment. If one person freezes, others become alert. If one laughs, others join. This alignment reduces delay. It increases cohesion. It allows groups to act as units. However, the same mechanism can amplify distress. In environments saturated with stress, the nervous system remains in a mirrored state. Exposure accumulates. Modern media extends the reach of mirroring beyond physical proximity. Images on screens trigger the same circuits as live interaction. A video of suffering activates pain networks. News of disaster generates bodily response. The system does not recognize distance. This creates a mismatch between evolutionary design and modern conditions. The mirroring system evolved for small groups with limited exposure. It now operates in a world of constant input. The result is continuous low-level activation. Many people carry tension that does not originate in their immediate environment. The body responds to stories as if they were happening nearby. Regulation becomes essential. The nervous system requires periods of reduced input. Without them, mirroring leads to saturation. Some individuals learn to dampen resonance. They become less reactive. This can appear as emotional distance. It's often adaptive. Others remain highly permeable. They absorb states easily. They feel deeply. They may struggle to separate their own experience from what they witness. Neither pattern is inherently right. Each reflects adaptation to context. The brain's mirroring capacity is not fixed. It is plastic. Training, therapy, and experience can modify it. Practices that increase awareness of internal state improve regulation. Learning to notice bodily responses creates space between observation and absorption. This does not eliminate empathy. It refines it. The goal is not to stop mirroring. It is to prevent loss of boundary. Healthy empathy allows perception without collapse. It permits resonance without overwhelm. The brain is capable of this balance. It requires feedback. It requires rest. It requires environments that do not constantly flood the system. Understanding mirroring shifts how emotional experiences are interpreted. Feeling another's pain is not weakness. It is neural simulation. It is the brain doing what it evolved to do. The challenge is not to remove the echo, but to manage its volume. From this point, attention turns to a specific set of cells that illustrate this process clearly. The next stretch examines mirror neurons themselves and how they shape shared experience. Mirror neurons were first identified in the early 1990s by a team of neuroscientists in Italy, studying the motor systems of macaque monkeys. Their original goal was simple: to understand how the brain controls movement. They placed tiny electrodes in a region of the monkey brain involved in grasping and recorded the activity of individual neurons while the animal reached for objects. What they noticed was unexpected. Certain neurons fired not only when the monkey grasped a piece of food, but also when the monkey watched a researcher perform the same action. The monkey could be sitting still, yet the neuron behaved as though the monkey itself were moving. At first, the researchers assumed it was a mistake. They checked the equipment. They repeated the experiment. The pattern persisted. The neuron responded to both execution and observation. This was not simply recognition. The neuron was not just signaling that an action was seen. It was activating the same motor representation used to perform the action. This finding suggested that the brain does not keep perception and action fully separate. It uses overlapping circuits for both. Observation becomes a form of internal rehearsal. Subsequent studies showed similar systems in humans. Brain imaging revealed that areas involved in movement, facial expression, and sensation activate when people observe others performing actions or expressing emotion. Watching someone lift a cup activates regions associated with your own hand movement. Seeing a facial expression activates regions associated with producing that expression. Observing pain activates parts of the brain involved in experiencing pain. The body becomes a reference point. The brain uses itself to understand others. This is what creates the sense of a shared body. Not in a mystical sense, but in a functional one. The nervous system uses its own structures to model external states. This modelling is fast and unconscious. You do not decide to simulate, it happens as soon as perception occurs. The system does not require intent, it does not require identification. It operates even when you dislike the person in front of you. You may resist emotionally, but the initial simulation still occurs. This is why expressions can be contagious. Smiles spread, yawns propagate, posture aligns. These effects occur because the same motor patterns become active in observers. A yawn is particularly illustrative. Seeing someone yawn activates the same circuits involved in yawning. The body prepares, the breath deepens, the jaw loosens. Even when you suppress the action, the internal state shifts. This is not imitation in a social sense, it is neural coupling. The mirroring system extends beyond movement into emotion. Regions such as the anterior insula and anterior cingulate cortex become active when you experience pain and when you observe pain in others. These areas integrate bodily signals and emotional meaning. When you see someone hurt, your brain produces a muted version of that state. You do not feel the injury, but you feel enough to recognize it. This internal echo provides information. It allows you to infer what the other person might be experiencing. It creates a bridge between external behavior and internal state. The brain does not need to solve a logical puzzle. It feels its way into understanding. This is why empathy often precedes explanation. You know something is wrong before you know why. The shared body is therefore a construct of overlapping neural representations. It is not that two nervous systems merge. It is that one nervous system temporarily occupies patterns associated with another. This occupation is brief. It fades quickly, but repeated exposure strengthens associations. Over time, certain cues become tightly linked with certain internal states. This process underlies social learning. Children learn how emotions feel by observing others. They do not need verbal instruction. They watch faces, they hear voices, their brains mirror. A child who sees calm responses learns that distress can settle. A child who sees volatility learns that arousal escalates. The mirroring system encodes these patterns. These early encodings influence adult empathy. They shape what feels familiar. They determine which states resonate easily and which feel foreign. The mirroring system is therefore not neutral. It carries the imprint of experience. Cultural variation illustrates this. Different cultures express emotion differently. Some emphasize restraint, others encourage display. The brain learns which patterns correspond to which states within that context. When you encounter unfamiliar expression styles, mirroring becomes less precise. The system lacks reference. This can create misunderstanding. A neutral face may appear hostile. A restrained response may seem cold. Learning bridges this gap. Exposure expands the internal library. The nervous system updates associations. This is why empathy improves with diversity of experience. The more patterns the brain recognizes, the more accurately it can simulate. However, the mirroring system also has limits. It is tuned for face-to-face interaction. It evolved in environments where social groups were small and cues were local. In modern settings, it encounters volume. News feeds present suffering from across the globe. Images arrive continuously. Each triggers simulation. The body responds as if it were present. The heart rate changes, muscles tense, stress hormones release. Yet there is no opportunity for resolution. No action follows, no care can be given. The system remains activated without closure. This mismatch contributes to fatigue. The shared body extends beyond manageable bounds. Some individuals adapt by reducing sensitivity. They learn to disengage. Others remain highly responsive. They feel constantly affected. Neither response is pathological by default. Both are strategies. Understanding the mirroring system reframes these differences. High empathy is not excess emotion. It is heightened simulation. Low empathy is not absence of care. It may be dampened input. The goal is not to equalize everyone. It is to allow each nervous system to regulate. The shared body also underlies cooperation. In conversation, people mirror each other's rhythm. Speech patterns align. Pauses synchronize. This reduces cognitive load. Interaction becomes smooth. When alignment fails, conversation feels strained. Interruptions increase. Misunderstandings grow. The nervous systems are out of sync. This is why rapport matters. It reflects neural coupling. The mirroring system also supports skill learning. Watching someone perform a task activates the same circuits required to perform it. This primes the motor system. It accelerates acquisition. Athletes visualize movements. Musicians watch technique. The brain rehearses. This property is not separate from empathy. It is the same mechanism applied to different domains. The shared body therefore extends beyond emotion into action. It is a general-purpose simulation system. It allows humans to coordinate without constant instruction. It reduces the need for explicit communication. It creates a baseline of understanding. At the same time, it introduces vulnerability. When you mirror distress, you experience discomfort. When you mirror anger, your own arousal rises. This can escalate conflict. Two people in tension can amplify each other. One raises voice, the other mirrors tension. Both escalate. Regulation interrupts this loop. A calm response dampens mirroring. The system adjusts downward. This is why calm presence can de-escalate. It provides a different pattern for simulation. The shared body is therefore not only a conduit, it is a feedback system. Each interaction modifies both participants. In groups, these effects multiply. Emotional climates emerge. A workplace feels tense. A classroom feels relaxed. These states persist beyond individual interactions. They are the aggregate of countless mirrored signals. Understanding this reveals why environment matters. Spaces filled with noise, urgency, and unpredictability maintain elevated arousal. Spaces designed for quiet and predictability support regulation. The nervous system responds to patterns. Mirror neurons illustrate one aspect of this system. They are not the whole story. Empathy involves multiple networks, but they demonstrate the core principle. Observation activates embodiment. You do not simply see, you participate. The shared body is the basis of social existence. It allows coordination. It enables care. It transmits mood. It teaches. It also requires management. Without awareness, the echo can dominate. You may carry states that are not yours. You may confuse internal and external origin. Learning to recognize this process creates space. You can notice when a feeling arrives from outside. You can choose how much to carry. The echo does not disappear. It becomes adjustable. From here, attention shifts to simple, everyday examples. Yawns, smiles, tension in a room. The next stretch explores how these ordinary experiences reveal the mechanics of empathy in daily life. Yawns and smiles are small, ordinary events. They pass through daily life without ceremony. They appear in offices, classrooms, kitchens, buses, waiting rooms. Yet they reveal something fundamental about how human nervous systems interact. They demonstrate in simple form the mechanics of empathy at work. When one person yawns and another follows, nothing has been discussed. No agreement has been made. There is no social contract involved. The second yawn is not a decision. It is a response generated by neural coupling. The same is true of smiles. One person smiles, another responds before meaning is analysed. The muscles shift. The corners of the mouth rise. The body aligns. These reactions occur even when people try to resist them. A yawn can be suppressed, but the internal state still changes. Breathing deepens, the jaw loosens, the eyes moisten, the nervous system prepares. This happens because the brain does not treat observation as passive. It treats it as input for simulation. The circuits involved in producing an action become active when that action is seen. The body prepares as if it were about to act. Yawning is a particularly clear example because it has no direct social function. It is not a signal with semantic content. It is a physiological behavior related to arousal and oxygen regulation. Yet it spreads through groups. The contagiousness of yawning varies across individuals. Some people yawn frequently when others do, some rarely respond. This variability reflects differences in mirroring sensitivity. Studies show that people who score higher on measures of empathic sensitivity are more likely to catch yawns. Children on the autism spectrum, who often process social cues differently, show lower rates of contagious yawning. The link is not absolute, but it is consistent. The brain area associated with this effect includes motor regions, insula, and areas involved in social cognition. When a yawn is observed, these networks activate. The body follows. Smiling operates through similar pathways. Facial muscles are represented in motor cortex. When a smile is seen, those representations become active. The observer's face prepares to match the pattern. This does not mean that every smile will be returned. Social context modulates expression. Power dynamics, cultural norms, and personal history influence whether the action completes. But the internal activation occurs regardless. The nervous system aligns first. Behavior follows if permitted. This alignment reduces uncertainty. When two people share expression, they enter a synchronized state. Their bodies signal compatibility. This facilitates cooperation. In evolutionary terms, this mattered. Early humans relied on nonverbal communication. Rapid alignment improved coordination during hunting, foraging, and defense. A shared posture or expression conveyed readiness without words. Even today, coordination depends on this. In conversation, micro-mirroring of facial movement and posture creates rhythm. Listeners nod slightly. Speakers adjust pace. The interaction flows. When mirroring is disrupted, interaction becomes awkward. Delays increase. Responses feel mismatched. People describe the encounter as uncomfortable without knowing why. Yawns and smiles illustrate how little input is required to trigger this system. A brief glance is enough. A fraction of a second activates circuits. This mechanism does not distinguish between voluntary and involuntary actions. It responds to pattern. It does not ask whether the yawn was intentional. It registers configuration and movement. The same applies to tension. When one person stiffens, others do as well. When one person relaxes, others follow. These changes are subtle. They occur below conscious awareness. But they shape atmosphere. A room can feel heavy. A gathering can feel light. These impressions arise from aggregated micro-adjustments across bodies. The brain continuously tracks these signals. It uses them to predict behavior. It adjusts readiness accordingly. This is not emotional contagion in a metaphorical sense. It is physiological coupling. The body treats observed states as partial instructions. In practical terms, this means that environments influence internal state through people. Stress spreads, calm spreads, energy spreads. In settings where urgency dominates, nervous systems remain activated. In settings designed for quiet, arousal decreases. This is why hospitals feel tense. This is why libraries feel calm. It is not only architecture, it is the state of the people within. Yawns in a meeting may indicate fatigue spreading. Smiles in a group may indicate safety increasing. These signals regulate group energy. The system operates without awareness. You do not notice the hundreds of micro-adjustments your body makes in response to others, yet they accumulate. Over time, this shapes mood. A person who spends time around anxious individuals may become anxious. A person who spends time around relaxed individuals may settle. This is not mimicry in a conscious sense. It is nervous system tuning. This tuning is adaptive. It aligns individuals with their environment. It reduces mismatch. In dangerous settings, heightened alertness is useful. In safe settings, relaxation conserves energy. Problems arise when tuning becomes chronic. When the environment is persistently stressed, the body remains activated. When exposure to distress is constant, the nervous system never returns to baseline. Modern life creates this condition. Media exposes people to continuous signals of threat, conflict, and suffering. Each image activates simulation. Each headline triggers arousal. The system evolved for direct interaction with a small number of people. It now operates in a global information stream. Yawns and smiles are harmless examples, but the same mechanism applies to fear, anger, and grief. A video of violence activates the same circuits as witnessing violence in person. The body cannot tell the difference. This does not mean that everyone reacts equally. Individual differences in sensitivity and regulation shape response. Some nervous systems dampen input, others amplify. These differences often appear early. Children vary in reactivity. Some cry when others cry, some remain unaffected. These traits interact with environment. A highly sensitive child in a volatile environment may develop hypervigilance. The mirroring system becomes tuned to threat. The body reacts quickly. This can be protective. It can also lead to anxiety. A less reactive child in the same environment may appear resilient. Their system filters more. They feel less. Neither pattern is moral. Both reflect adaptation. Yawning studies illustrate this. Contagious yawning increases with social closeness. People are more likely to yawn when they see friends than strangers. The system weights familiarity. This bias improves group cohesion. It ensures that alignment occurs most strongly within trusted networks. Smiles follow similar rules. A stranger's smile may be ignored. A friend's smile almost always elicits response. This selectivity shapes social bonds. The brain uses mirroring to maintain group boundaries. It aligns with those it recognizes. Exposure can modify this. Repeated interaction increases familiarity. The system updates. Alignment becomes easier. This is why teams that work together develop shared rhythm. This is why families adopt similar expressions. This is why couples begin to mirror posture. These patterns emerge without instruction. The spread of yawns also reveals the automatic nature of simulation. Even thinking about yawning can trigger one. Reading the word can loosen the jaw. The representation itself activates. This demonstrates that the brain does not require visual input alone. Any cue associated with the action can engage the system. Language becomes a trigger. This property underlies storytelling. Descriptions of action activate motor circuits. Descriptions of emotion activate emotional circuits. Listening is participation. This is why films and books can be exhausting. The body is active even when the person is still. This is also why calm voices and slow pacing induce relaxation. The nervous system mirrors rhythm. In sleep-oriented content, this is intentional. The voice becomes a pattern the listener aligns with. Breathing slows, muscles release. The same mechanism operates in conflict. Raised voices accelerate heart rate. Sharp movements increase tension. Understanding this reveals why presence matters. How you hold your body affects others. How you speak shapes nervous systems. Leadership relies on this. Calm leaders stabilize groups. Anxious leaders spread agitation. Parenting relies on this. Regulated caregivers settle children. Dysregulated caregivers increase arousal. Yawns and smiles are the visible tip of a continuous process. They show that alignment does not require content. It requires pattern. The shared body is always in operation. From moment to moment, your nervous system samples others and adjusts. You do this without noticing. This does not mean you lose agency. Regulation allows you to modulate response. Awareness creates space. noticing that a feeling arrived from outside allows you to decide how much to carry, but the initial echo remains. The body mirrors before the mind interprets. This is the foundation of empathy. It is not a choice, it is a reflex. From here, attention turns to how this mechanism extends beyond simple actions into complex emotional states. The next stretch examines how moods spread through everyday life, shaping rooms, relationships, and entire communities. Emotional contagion is the everyday expression of empathy in motion. It is the way feelings move through spaces without being spoken. It is how tension settles into a room, how calm spreads across a group, how excitement builds in a crowd. It happens constantly, quietly, and without permission. You enter a workplace where voices are tight and movements are sharp. Within minutes, your own shoulders rise. Your breathing becomes shallow. You have not been told that anything is wrong. No one has explained the situation, yet your body has adjusted. The nervous system has sampled the environment and aligned itself. Later that same day, you step into a different space. People speak slowly. Movements are unhurried. There is no urgency in the air. Your body responds again. Muscles release. Breath deepens. The internal tempo slows. In neither case did you choose how to feel. You were tuned. This tuning is not symbolic. It is physiological. It involves heart rate, muscle tone, hormone release, and neural activity. The body responds to patterns in other bodies. Emotional contagion does not require direct interaction. You can absorb mood from across a room. You can feel it through a phone call. You can pick it up from a short video. The system responds to tone, rhythm, posture, and expression. This is why customer service workers often report exhaustion after a shift. They are exposed to frustration, impatience, and stress. Each interaction triggers simulation. Over hours, these states accumulate. Teachers experience the same effect. A restless class produces restlessness. A focused group creates focus. The teacher's nervous system aligns with the room. Families experience it. A stressed parent raises the arousal of children. A calm caregiver lowers it. The effect is not abstract. It is visible in behavior and measurable in physiology. Infants rely on this system. They regulate through others. A baby cannot soothe itself effectively. It depends on a caregiver's calm to settle. The infant's nervous system mirrors the adult's. This is why parental regulation matters more than instruction. A calm voice stabilizes. An anxious presence destabilizes. The infant does not understand words. It reads state. As children grow, they internalize these patterns. They learn what baseline feels like. They carry it into other environments. In adulthood, emotional contagion continues to operate. It shapes group dynamics. It influences decisions. It determines whether a meeting feels productive or draining. It also explains why some people feel overwhelmed in crowds. Multiple nervous systems broadcast signals. The highly sensitive individual mirrors many at once. The result is overload. Others filter more. They remain stable in noisy environments. Their nervous systems dampen input. These differences are often mistaken for personality traits. In reality, they reflect variation in sensory and emotional gating. Emotional contagion also occurs in digital spaces. Group chats carry tone. Social media feeds transmit mood. A stream of outrage produces arousal. A stream of humor produces lightness. The body responds even when the source is symbolic. Reading a message with sharp punctuation can increase heart rate. Watching a clip of conflict triggers tension. The system does not require physical presence. It responds to cues. This creates a new challenge. The nervous system evolved for small-scale interaction. It now processes global input. News cycles deliver constant signals of threat. Each headline activates simulation. The body remains in a state of readiness. Over time, this becomes chronic stress. The organism never fully settles. Emotional contagion therefore has a cost. It keeps individuals aligned with their environment, but if the environment is persistently distressed, Alignment becomes harmful. Some respond by disengaging. They reduce exposure. They avoid news. They withdraw from social spaces. This is not apathy. It is self-regulation. Others remain engaged and become exhausted. They feel responsible for what they witness. They carry emotions that are not theirs. Understanding emotional contagion reframes these responses. It is not that some people care more. It is that some nervous systems absorb more. The system itself is neutral. It reflects input. In groups, emotional contagion can escalate. One person's frustration spreads. Others mirror. The group becomes tense. This increases error. Miscommunication grows. The reverse is also true. One regulated individual can dampen arousal. A steady presence provides a different pattern. Others mirror calm. This is why certain people feel grounding. They do not transmit urgency. They slow into action. They regulate the field. This is not charisma. It is nervous system stability. Leadership relies on this. A leader's state propagates. In crisis, a calm leader prevents panic. An anxious leader amplifies it. In healthcare, this effect is critical. A panicked clinician increases patient distress. A composed clinician reduces it. Emotional contagion is therefore a form of influence. It operates without persuasion. This influence is not always welcome. In toxic environments, it traps individuals in cycles of stress. In supportive environments, it sustains well-being. People often blame themselves for feeling drained after social contact. They assume weakness. In reality, their nervous systems are functioning as designed. The issue is volume and duration. Short exposure allows recovery. Constant exposure does not. Boundaries become essential. Limiting input is not avoidance. It is calibration. Learning to notice when a feeling originates externally is the first step. The sensation may still arise, but recognition creates distance. You can observe the echo without merging with it. This does not remove empathy. It preserves it. Without this skill, emotional contagion becomes identity. You carry others' states as your own. With it, empathy becomes information rather than burden. The system remains active. It becomes selective. This selectivity is learned. It involves attention, breathing, and posture. The nervous system responds to internal cues as well as external ones. Slow breathing reduces arousal. Relaxed muscles signal safety. These internal patterns counteract incoming stress. By regulating yourself, you alter what you mirror. This is not mental trickery. It is physiology. Emotional contagion operates in both directions. You influence others as much as they influence you. Every room is a network of nervous systems. From here, attention moves toward a particular consequence of this system, the way pain becomes transferable. The next stretch examines why suffering in others can feel as if it belongs to you. Pain is usually thought of as personal. It belongs to the body that is injured, the mind that is grieving, the person who has lived the event. Yet in daily life, pain often moves beyond its source. You see someone hurt, and something inside you tightens. You hear a story of loss, and a heaviness settles in your chest. You watch a scene of suffering, and your body reacts as if it were present. This reaction is not imagination. It is not over-identification. It is not weakness. It is the nervous system doing what it evolved to do, simulate. The same networks that process your own pain respond when you observe pain in others. Brain imaging studies show that when a person experiences physical pain, regions such as the anterior cingulate cortex and anterior insula become active. These areas integrate bodily signals and emotional meaning. When that same person watches another individual in pain, many of those same regions activate again. The brain does not wait for direct injury. It treats observed pain as relevant information. It generates a muted internal version of the state. This internal version does not carry the full sensory intensity of the original. You do not feel the cut or the burn, but you feel enough to recognize threat, distress, and urgency. The body produces tension, breathing changes, the stomach tightens, the chest feels heavy. These changes are small, but they are real. They influence posture, attention, and mood. From an evolutionary perspective, this made sense. In early human groups, recognizing injury in others mattered. If one member was wounded, the group needed to respond. If danger caused harm, others needed to avoid it. The cost of ignoring suffering was high. A nervous system that reacted only to its own pain would be slow. A system that reacted to observed pain gained information without risk. This capacity created coordination. It allowed groups to protect one another. It increased survival. That same mechanism now operates in environments far removed from those origins. You witness harm through screens. You read about tragedy in headlines. You hear stories from people you may never meet again. The nervous system responds in the same way. It does not ask whether the suffering is near or far. It does not evaluate your responsibility. It detects patterns associated with pain and generates an internal echo. This is why suffering feels transferable. The body reacts as if it were partially involved. The problem is scale. The system evolved for small groups and immediate contexts. It now operates in a world where suffering is broadcast continuously. Each image, each story, each clip triggers simulation. The body accumulates traces. Over time, these traces add up. They alter baseline state. What begins as empathy becomes burden. People often describe this as carrying weight that does not belong to them. They feel responsible for pain they did not cause and cannot relieve. They experience fatigue, sadness, or irritability without clear personal cause. This is not emotional fragility. It is cumulative activation. The nervous system is not designed to process endless signals of distress without resolution. In early contexts, suffering led to action. You helped, you fled, you changed behavior, the loop closed. In modern contexts, suffering often arrives without possible response. You cannot intervene in distant events. You cannot resolve every story. The loop remains open. The body stays activated. This is one of the foundations of compassion fatigue. It appears in caregivers, therapists, medical staff, social workers, journalists, and anyone regularly exposed to others' pain. It also appears in people who consume large amounts of distressing media. The system does not differentiate between professional exposure and personal exposure. It reacts to pattern. Some people develop numbness. This is not lack of care. It is protective dampening. The nervous system reduces sensitivity to avoid overload. Others remain highly responsive and become exhausted. They feel drained by the world. Both responses are adaptive. Understanding pain as transferable through simulation clarifies why boundaries are necessary. Without boundaries, the echo becomes constant. The challenge is not to stop caring. It is to regulate exposure. This requires recognizing that not every pain signal requires full internal engagement. The system reacts automatically, but attention can modulate intensity. Awareness creates space. When you notice that a feeling began after exposure, you can contextualize it. You can allow it to pass rather than absorb it as personal truth. This does not eliminate empathy. It reframes it as information rather than identity. Pain that arrives from outside can be acknowledged without being carried indefinitely. The nervous system learns through repetition. If every distressing input is fully embodied, the system remains in high arousal. If some inputs are acknowledged and released, baseline stability returns. This process involves physiology. Slow breathing, relaxed posture, and intentional disengagement signal safety. They counteract arousal. It also involves cognition. Reminding yourself that a state originated externally changes interpretation. The brain updates context. These are not tricks. They are feedback loops. The mirroring system is not a moral judge. It is a sensor. It reports. What you do with the report determines impact. Pain feels transferable because the brain evolved to make it so. It is part of coordination. It allows one organism to respond to another. The cost appears only when volume exceeds capacity. In a small group, this rarely happened. In a global network, it is constant. Learning to live with empathy in such conditions requires new skills. It requires intentional limits. It requires recovery time. Without these, the nervous system remains in a state of partial injury. This does not mean withdrawal from the world. It means pacing. Just as muscles fatigue when overused, empathy fatigues when overexposed. Rest restores function. Ignoring this leads to burnout. Recognizing it preserves capacity. Pain that is not yours can still inform you. It can guide values. It can motivate action where possible. It does not need to become your internal climate. The body cannot tell the difference between observed and experienced pain. The mind can. That distinction is the beginning of sustainable empathy. From here, attention turns to an important clarification. Empathy is often confused with sympathy. They are related, but they are not the same process. Understanding the difference changes how emotional load is managed. Empathy and sympathy are often treated as interchangeable words. In everyday conversation, they are used to mean roughly the same thing, caring about how someone else feels. But in the nervous system, they represent two different processes. One happens inside the body before thought. The other happens after interpretation. One is automatic. The other is constructed. Empathy is resonance. It is the internal echo that appears when your nervous system simulates another person's state. It happens whether you want it to or not. It does not require reflection. It does not wait for judgment. It arrives as sensation. Sympathy is appraisal. It begins after you recognize what the other person is experiencing. It involves evaluation and intention. You notice distress and decide that it matters. You feel concern. You may feel sorrow for the person. You may feel a desire to help. Sympathy lives in thought and meaning. Empathy is what makes another person's tension register in your chest. Sympathy is what makes you think, that must be difficult for them. Empathy happens first. This distinction matters because empathy carries the body with it. Sympathy does not have to. You can feel sympathetic towards someone without absorbing their state. You can understand suffering and care about it without feeling it in your muscles. Empathy, by contrast, is embodied. It recruits the same circuits that generate your own internal states. It creates partial participation. This is why empathy can feel heavy and sympathy can feel clean. Sympathy allows distance. Empathy collapses it. Neither is superior. They serve different functions. Empathy allows you to detect what is happening in others quickly and without language. It makes social life fluid. It enables coordination. It creates immediacy. Sympathy allows you to choose response. It introduces agency. It gives you room to act rather than simply react. In a regulated nervous system, these processes work together. Empathy provides information. Sympathy guides action. In a dysregulated system, empathy dominates. The body absorbs without filter. Sympathy arrives too late to protect. This is why people who are highly empathic often report exhaustion. They do not simply understand distress. They feel it, repeatedly, continuously. They may also be told they are too sensitive. This language implies excess. But what is actually happening is high simulation with limited buffering. Sympathy does not require this level of simulation. You can care without mirroring deeply. Learning to separate these experiences is not about becoming cold. It is about restoring choice. You cannot prevent empathy from arising. The nervous system mirrors automatically, but you can prevent empathy from becoming identity. The first step is recognition. When a feeling appears, you can ask internally whether it began inside you or arrived through observation. This does not block the sensation. It contextualizes it. The body still reacts. The chest may tighten. the stomach may drop. But the mind understands origin. This understanding changes trajectory. Instead of merging with the state, you can hold it. You can say without words, "This is information." Sympathy can then engage. You can care without drowning. This distinction becomes critical in professions built around exposure to suffering. Therapists, nurses, social workers, emergency responders, and caregivers encounter distress daily. Empathy allows them to read others. Sympathy motivates support. Without boundaries, empathy becomes overload. Without empathy, sympathy becomes mechanical. Training in these fields increasingly focuses on this balance. Practitioners learn to notice bodily response and regulate it. They learn to acknowledge internal echoes without becoming them. This is not detachment, it is skill. In personal life, the same principle applies. You can sit with a grieving friend and feel the weight of their loss. That initial resonance is empathy. You can then recognize that the loss is not yours. That recognition allows you to remain present without collapsing. Sympathy then guides your response. You offer attention. You listen. You do not disappear into their pain. Many people confuse empathy with self-erasure. They believe caring requires full immersion. This belief leads to burnout. Caring does not require carrying. Empathy informs. Sympathy responds. The nervous system provides raw data. The mind decides how to engage. This separation does not come naturally in a world that praises emotional openness without teaching regulation. People are encouraged to feel everything without guidance on how to metabolize what they feel. The result is saturation. Learning the difference between empathy and sympathy gives shape to experience. It restores boundary. You do not need to close your nervous system. You need to give it context. Empathy is the echo. Sympathy is the stance you take toward it. One happens in your body, the other happens in your orientation. This becomes especially important in relationships. Partners often mirror each other's stress. One becomes anxious, the other follows. The cycle escalates. Recognizing the echo allows interruption. You can notice that the anxiety entered through contact. You can regulate yourself. The cycle breaks. Without this awareness, couples often believe they are both stressed. In reality, one system has entrained the other. Children rely on this distinction, even though they cannot articulate it. They mirror adults. If adults collapse into children's distress, regulation disappears. If adults remain steady, children settle. Empathy without stability transmits chaos. Empathy with regulation transmits safety. Sympathy provides direction. It allows you to decide how to respond to what you feel. This is not suppression. It is containment. Containment does not deny emotion. It holds it. The nervous system still mirrors. The mind does not surrender. Over time, this becomes automatic. You feel, recognize, and adjust. Empathy remains alive. It becomes sustainable. From here, the focus moves to how this capacity develops in early life. The next stretch explores how children learn to feel others and how emotional awareness is built. Emotional awareness does not appear fully formed. It grows. It emerges slowly as a child's nervous system learns to interpret the signals moving through and around it. Long before a child can name feelings, long before language gives shape to experience, the body is already responding to the states of others. The foundation of empathy is laid in silence, in gaze, in touch, in tone. An infant arrives with a nervous system prepared for connection. The brain is wired to notice faces. It tracks eyes within hours of birth. It responds to voice patterns. It mirrors expression. These are not learned behaviors. They are built in. A newborn cannot survive alone. It must detect caregivers. It must align with them. When a caregiver smiles, the infant's facial muscles begin to move. When the caregiver's voice softens, the infant's breathing changes. When the caregiver becomes tense, the infant's body tightens. There is no interpretation. There is only resonance. This is the earliest form of emotional awareness. The child does not yet know what sadness is. The child does not understand fear. But the child feels changes in the internal state that arise in response to others. Over time, the brain begins to map these sensations. It learns that a certain heaviness in the chest often appears when a face looks a particular way. It learns that a flutter in the stomach follows raised voices. It learns that warmth accompanies gentle touch. These mappings form the basis of emotional understanding. They are built from repeated experiences. A caregiver who responds consistently teaches the child that states are manageable. When the infant cries and is held, the nervous system experiences distress followed by regulation. The body learns that discomfort can resolve. This pattern becomes internal. Later, when the child sees distress in others, the echo appears, but it is accompanied by an implicit sense that it can pass. If instead distress is met with unpredictability or neglect, the mapping changes. The child experiences arousal without resolution. The body learns that tension persists. The nervous system remains vigilant. These early patterns shape empathy. A child raised in a stable environment often develops a balanced response. They feel others, but they do not collapse. A child raised in volatility may become hyper-attuned. They monitor constantly. They absorb states quickly. Empathy becomes survival. In some children, the opposite occurs. When the environment is overwhelming, the nervous system may dampen. Sensitivity decreases. Emotional cues become muted. This too is adaptive. It reduces load. Neither outcome is chosen. Both reflect how the system learns to protect itself. Language enters later. Adults begin to label feelings. You're sad. You're angry. You're excited. These labels help the child link internal sensation with concept. They provide structure. But the sensations existed first. A child does not learn empathy from instruction. A child learns empathy from experience. They learn it by being felt. When a caregiver mirrors a child's state, the child learns that inner experience is visible. When a caregiver names and responds, the child learns that states can be shared. This process builds emotional literacy. If a child's emotions are dismissed or punished, the mapping becomes distorted. The child may learn to suppress awareness. They may disconnect from internal cues. Empathy toward others may remain, but empathy toward self diminishes. Some adults can feel others deeply but struggle to identify their own states. Their early environment taught them to attend outward, not inward. Others may struggle to feel others at all because early environments did not model attunement. The system never learned to map external cues to internal states. These patterns persist because they are embedded in neural pathways. They are not habits in the usual sense. They are defaults. However, the brain remains plastic. Experience continues to reshape mapping throughout life. Relationships, therapy, and reflection can alter patterns. Understanding the developmental origin of empathy changes how differences are interpreted. High sensitivity is not excess, it is adaptation. Low sensitivity is not deficiency, it is adaptation. Children do not choose how much they feel. Their nervous systems learn from context. In classrooms, this becomes visible. Some children absorb the mood of the room. They become unsettled when others are restless. They calm when others are calm. Other children remain steady regardless of group state. Teachers often misinterpret these differences. The sensitive child may be labelled distractible. The less reactive child may be labelled independent. In reality, these are nervous system styles. Educational environments that acknowledge this can support regulation. Predictable routines reduce load. Calm tone stabilizes. Clear transitions prevent overwhelm. At home, similar principles apply. A regulated adult provides a template. A dysregulated adult transmits arousal. Children mirror not only what is said, but how it is said. They internalize patterns of response. This is why emotional awareness is not taught by lecture. It is taught by presence. A parent who pauses before reacting teaches pause. A parent who names feelings teaches recognition. A parent who remains steady in distress teaches regulation. These lessons are stored in the body. Later, when the child becomes an adult, these embodied lessons guide empathy. The echo appears. The system either knows how to hold it, or it does not. Adults who are regulated learn to feel without drowning. Adults who are overwhelmed may feel everything intensely. Adults who are neglected may struggle to feel at all. None of these outcomes reflect character. They reflect wiring. Recognizing this reduces judgment. It replaces blame with understanding. Empathy is not a fixed trait. It is a capacity shaped by early experience and ongoing context. People often assume that empathy is purely moral. They praise it as virtue and criticize its absence as flaw. But empathy is not a decision. It is a function of how the nervous system learned to map others. This does not remove responsibility for behavior. It explains variation. Understanding this also clarifies why emotional education matters. Teaching children to notice bodily signals, to name states, and to regulate arousal builds sustainable empathy. Without these skills, empathy becomes chaotic. With them, empathy becomes usable. The child who learns to notice tension can breathe. The child who learns to name sadness can seek comfort. The child who learns that states pass can remain present. These skills remain into adulthood. From here, the focus widens. Emotional awareness does not develop in isolation. It is shaped by culture, language, and social norms. The next stretch explores how these forces teach people what to feel and how to feel it. Culture does not just tell people what to think. It teaches them what to notice. It trains the nervous system to prioritize certain signals and ignore others. It shapes how emotion is expressed, how it is interpreted, and how much of it is allowed to move between people. Empathy is built on perception. Perception is shaped by environment. That environment includes language, custom, rhythm of daily life, and social rules. From early childhood, people learn which expressions matter, which are hidden, and which are discouraged. In some cultures, emotion is displayed openly. Faces are animated. Voices rise and fall. Touch is common. In others, restraint is valued. Expression is subtle. Tone remains even. Personal space is protected. Neither approach is better. Each trains a different style of emotional awareness. A child raised in an expressive environment learns to read large signals. They become attuned to shifts in voice, posture, and gesture. Their mirroring system is fed frequent, clear input. They learn that emotion is visible and shared. A child raised in a restrained environment learns to read fine detail. They notice micro-changes in expression. They attend to timing, silence, and context. Their mirroring system becomes sensitive to subtle cues. Both children develop empathy. They simply develop different dictionaries. When people from different cultural backgrounds interact, misalignment can occur. An expressive person may seem overwhelming to a restrained one. A restrained person may seem distant to an expressive one. The nervous systems are reading different maps. The problem is not lack of empathy, it is mismatch of pattern. Language plays a central role in this process. Words do not create emotion, but they organize it. When a culture has many terms for specific states, people learn to differentiate them. When language is sparse, states blend. Some languages distinguish between types of sadness. Others group them. Some cultures name subtle forms of social discomfort. Others leave them unspoken. These linguistic structures feed back into perception. If a state has a name, it becomes easier to recognize. If it does not, it remains vague. Children learn emotional categories through conversation. A caregiver who says "you are frustrated" helps the child link sensation to concept. Over time, this allows finer awareness. In cultures where emotional language is limited, children may learn to feel without naming. Empathy still occurs, but interpretation differs. Culture also dictates whose emotions matter. Some societies prioritize elders, some prioritize children, some emphasize group harmony, others emphasize individual expression. These priorities shape empathy. A child learns whose distress requires response. They learn whose can be ignored. Gender norms further influence this. In many cultures, boys are taught to suppress vulnerability. Girls are encouraged to express it. The nervous systems of boys may learn to dampen sensitivity. The nervous systems of girls may remain open. These patterns are not innate. They are taught. The result is adult populations with different empathy profiles. Some individuals feel deeply but hide it. Others express readily. Some have learned to disengage. Others have learned to absorb. This diversity can enrich societies. It can also create misunderstanding. Modern global interaction brings these differences into constant contact. Online spaces mix cultures. People interpret tone through their own training. A direct statement may seem rude. A restrained reply may seem uncaring. The mirroring system still operates, but its interpretation depends on learned context. Empathy therefore requires translation. It is not enough to feel. One must learn what the feeling refers to. This is why cultural competence matters. It expands the internal library. It teaches the nervous system new patterns. Exposure changes perception. Over time, unfamiliar expressions become legible. The system updates. Travel does this. So does storytelling. So does friendship across difference. Without exposure, the mirroring system remains narrow. It resonates only with familiar forms. This limitation is not prejudice. It is lack of data. Prejudice arises when this limitation is interpreted as truth rather than gap. Language also shapes how people manage empathy. Some cultures encourage emotional boundaries, others encourage shared burden. In collectivist cultures, suffering is often communal. Empathy flows freely. In individualist cultures, emotional privacy is valued. Empathy is offered selectively. These norms influence regulation. In communal contexts, people may feel less alone but more burdened. In individual contexts, people may feel more independent but more isolated. Neither arrangement eliminates empathy. Each distributes it differently. Children internalize these norms. They learn how much to feel and when. The nervous system adapts accordingly. This adaptability is strength. It allows humans to function in diverse environments. It also means that empathy is not a single universal experience. It is a family of processes shaped by context. Understanding this reduces moralization. It becomes possible to see difference without assuming deficit. A person who seems reserved may feel deeply but express little. A person who seems dramatic may be using the expressive norms they learned. The echo occurs in both. It is managed differently. Cultural learning therefore sits on top of biology. The mirroring system provides capacity. Culture provides instruction. Together, they produce the experience of feeling others. From here, attention turns toward the evolutionary function of empathy. The next stretch examines how this capacity helped humans survive and coordinate long before modern society existed. Long before cities, writing, or science, human survival depended on coordination. Individuals alone were fragile. Groups endured. Food had to be found. Children had to be protected. Threats had to be detected. All of this required more than strength or intelligence. It required alignment. Empathy provided that alignment. A group that could sense internal states in its members moved as one. Fear in one person became caution in others. Fatigue in one signaled the need to rest. Injury in one drew assistance. No words were necessary. The nervous systems of individuals were linked by perception. This linkage reduced delay. A predator didn't need to be named. A sudden stillness in one body propagated through others. Muscles tightened, attention focused, the group prepared. Without empathy, every threat would require explicit communication. That would be too slow. Empathy allowed pre-verbal coordination. It also allowed care. Human infants are born helpless. They cannot walk. They cannot regulate temperature. They cannot feed themselves. Their survival depends on adult response. A caregiver does not calculate whether a cry matters. The sound triggers arousal. The body moves, milk flows, arms reach. This is not decision. It is resonance. The infant's distress becomes the caregiver's state. That transfer ensures response. Groups that lacked this mechanism would fail. Infants would die. Lineages would end. Empathy therefore became embedded in biology. It extended beyond parent and child. In small groups, illness or injury threatened collective survival. A wounded member could not hunt. A sick member could infect others. Detecting and responding mattered. The echo of pain motivated assistance. The group benefited. Empathy also supported teaching. Young members learned by watching. The mirroring system activated motor patterns. Observation became rehearsal. Skills transferred efficiently. Hunting techniques, tool use, and social behavior could be learned without instruction. A child saw. The brain simulated. The body followed. This reduced error. It accelerated development. Empathy also moderated conflict. Groups with no capacity to sense others would fracture. Escalation would be constant. Violence would destroy cohesion. Mirroring allowed early detection of anger and fear. It allowed de-escalation. A raised voice signaled danger. A softening posture signaled safety. These cues prevented constant confrontation. Empathy therefore did not simply create kindness. It created stability. It allowed social systems to function. In evolutionary terms, this was decisive. Humans are not the strongest animals. They are not the fastest. They do not have sharp claws or thick hides. They survive through cooperation. Cooperation requires trust. Trust requires prediction. Prediction requires understanding others' internal states. Empathy provided that understanding. It allowed humans to infer intention. A glance could signal readiness. A posture could signal withdrawal. A tone could signal reassurance. This reduced ambiguity. It made joint action possible. Groups that coordinated well outcompeted those that did not. Their children survived. Their genes propagated. Empathy therefore became universal. It is not an add-on. It is core. Even today, survival depends on it. In emergencies, people read each other. A glance communicates urgency. A tone communicates danger. A stillness communicates threat. First responders rely on this. They scan scenes. They sense panic. They adjust. In traffic, drivers read posture and speed. They predict. They avoid collision. In workplaces, teams coordinate. They sense overload. They redistribute effort. These processes often occur without words. Empathy also protects against isolation. Humans require connection. Loneliness harms health. Social integration improves survival. The nervous system rewards alignment. It releases oxytocin during bonding. It reduces stress when around others. Empathy facilitates this. It makes interaction meaningful. When you feel understood, your body settles. Heart rate slows. Stress hormones drop. Immune function improves. These effects are measurable. Social mammals show similar patterns. Primates groom. They synchronize. They comfort. Their stress markers change. Empathy is not uniquely human. It appears in other social species. Elephants respond to distress. Dogs mirror human emotion. Rats free trapped companions. These behaviors rely on similar neural mechanisms. Empathy is therefore a mammalian solution to group living. In humans, it reached exceptional complexity because social structures became complex. Language expanded it. Culture refined it. Technology extended it. But the core remains. Empathy helps you survive by aligning you with others. It provides early warning. It motivates care. It enables learning. It also imposes cost. Every adaptation has trade-offs. Empathy makes you vulnerable to other states. It exposes you to stress that is not yours. In ancestral environments, this cost was manageable. Group size was small, exposure was limited, resolution was possible. In modern environments, the cost increases. You may feel distress from strangers. You may absorb global suffering. You may mirror states without the possibility of response. The same mechanism that once saved lives now creates burden. This does not mean empathy is obsolete. It means context has changed. The nervous system still assumes that perceived suffering is actionable. It prepares you to respond. When response is impossible, the preparation becomes strain. This is why understanding empathy's survival function matters. It reframes overload. You're not weak for feeling. You're carrying a system designed for another scale. The solution is not to remove empathy. It is to adapt how it is used. Just as physical environments required new tools, emotional environments require new skills. Humans built clothing when climates changed. They built shelter. They built fire. Now they must build regulation. This regulation is not suppression. It is adaptation. Empathy still guides you toward others. It still signals need. It still supports connection. But it must be paired with boundaries. In ancestral groups, boundaries were natural. You knew everyone. You saw consequences. You acted. In modern life, boundaries must be intentional. This is not moral failure. It is ecological mismatch. Understanding empathy as survival technology changes perspective. It is no longer just kindness. It is infrastructure. It keeps societies functioning. Healthcare relies on it. Education relies on it. Families rely on it. Communities rely on it. Without empathy, systems collapse into rule enforcement. Cooperation becomes mechanical. With empathy alone, systems burn out. Balance is required. The next stretch examines what happens when this balance fails. It looks at the cost of constant resonance and why empathy can overwhelm. Empathy is designed to connect nervous systems. It draws one internal state toward another. In small doses, this creates understanding. In steady exposure, it creates load. The same mechanism that allows coordination can, under modern conditions, become a source of chronic strain. The nervous system does not know when to stop mirroring on its own. It reacts to input. It does not measure volume. It does not track cumulative effect. Each signal is treated as new and relevant. Each expression of distress activates the same circuits as the one before. In ancestral environments, this was not a problem. Signals were limited. A group might contain 20 or 30 individuals. Distress appeared occasionally. It was resolved locally. The body had time to return to baseline. In contemporary life, exposure is continuous. News feeds display suffering without pause. Workplaces transmit stress. Social networks carry emotional content at all hours. Many people live inside a stream of other people's states. The nervous system responds as it always has. It mirrors, it prepares, it tightens, it releases hormones, it shifts attention. But resolution does not follow. There is no injured group member to help, no predator to avoid, no action to take that completes the loop. The body remains in readiness. Over time, readiness becomes exhaustion. This exhaustion does not always feel dramatic. It often appears as dullness, as irritability, as heaviness, as the sense that everything takes more effort than it should. People describe it as being drained. They may not know why. They may believe something is wrong with them. In reality, their nervous systems are saturated. Empathy overload does not require dramatic events. It accumulates through ordinary exposure, a tense meeting, a difficult conversation, a troubling article, a distressed friend, a video clip, a comment thread. Each produces a small echo. One echo is manageable. Hundreds are not. Highly sensitive individuals feel this most clearly because their mirroring system is strong and their filtering is light. They detect subtle shifts. They register microstates. They absorb atmosphere. They often become emotional barometers. They know when a room is off. They sense conflict before it appears. This sensitivity can be valuable. It can also be costly. Without regulation, these individuals live in a near constant state of partial activation. Their bodies rarely settle fully. They may have difficulty sleeping. They may feel anxious without clear cause. They may withdraw socially because interaction feels heavy. Others experience overload differently. They become numb. The nervous system dampens input. Emotional cues blur. This can look like indifference. It is not. It is protection. The system reduces sensitivity to prevent collapse. Both patterns are responses to the same problem. Too much resonance without enough recovery. Empathy. Fatigue appears in caregiving professions because exposure is constant and personal. Nurses, therapists, teachers, and social workers mirror distress daily. They may help, but resolution is partial. The next case arrives. Over time, the echo accumulates. This fatigue is not lack of compassion. It is the cost of sustained simulation. The body is not meant to carry hundreds of internal states at once. In these professions, burnout is common. Workers feel emotionally empty. They may withdraw. They may become cynical. They may lose the ability to care. This is not moral failure. It is nervous system collapse. Training increasingly recognizes this. Regulation is taught. Boundaries are emphasized. Rest is reframed as necessity. The same principles apply outside professional contexts. Parents caring for distressed children, partners supporting struggling loved ones, individuals absorbing social turmoil. The nervous system does not distinguish between roles. It responds to pattern. If you live among people in distress, your body becomes distressed. This does not mean you must leave. It means you must regulate. Regulation begins with recognition. When you feel exhausted after interaction, it is not because you are weak. It is because you mirrored. When you feel heavy after reading news, it is because your body treated those stories as real. When you feel anxious in a tense room, it is because your nervous system aligned. This understanding changes how you respond. Instead of blaming yourself, you can adjust exposure. You can choose when to engage. You can choose when to step back. Stepping back is not apathy. It is maintenance. Just as muscles require rest after exertion, empathy requires rest after resonance. Rest does not always mean solitude. It means environments where input is gentle. It means voices that are steady. It means rhythms that are slow. Nature often provides this. So do quiet rooms. So does music with regular tempo. So does sleep. The body recalibrates when patterns shift. Breathing is a direct regulator. Slow, even breathing tells the nervous system that danger is past. Muscles release. Heart rate drops. Posture matters. An upright, open posture increases arousal. A supported, relaxed posture reduces it. These are not symbolic. They are physical instructions. You cannot think your way out of empathy overload. You must change input and signal safety. Technology complicates this. Devices deliver emotional content continuously. The body does not know that a phone is optional. It responds to what appears. Limiting exposure is therefore not avoidance. It is design. You would not stand in a loud room all day without ear protection. Emotional noise is similar. Learning when to turn away preserves capacity. This does not mean disengaging from the world. It means pacing engagement. Empathy that never rests becomes fragile. Empathy that rests becomes resilient. From here, attention moves toward a specific form of overload recognized in science and healthcare. The next stretch examines compassion fatigue and how it emerges. Compassion fatigue is what happens when empathy operates without sufficient recovery. It is not a personality flaw. It is not a lack of care. It is a physiological outcome of sustained exposure to others' distress. In scientific terms, Compassion fatigue is a state of chronic stress resulting from repeated activation of the systems involved in emotional mirroring and caregiving. It shares features with burnout and post-traumatic stress, but it arises specifically from caring. The nervous system that allows one person to feel another's pain is the same system that regulates threat and safety. When it is repeatedly activated by distress, it begins to treat the world as persistently unsafe. Stress hormones remain elevated. The body stays in readiness. Recovery becomes incomplete. Over time, this produces measurable changes. Heart rate variability decreases, indicating reduced flexibility in autonomic regulation. Cortisol patterns flatten, disrupting energy and sleep. Immune function weakens. Attention becomes narrow. Emotional range shrinks. People experiencing compassion fatigue often report feeling detached, irritable, and exhausted. They may lose interest in activities that once mattered. They may feel numb toward others. They may feel guilty for that numbness. This guilt deepens the strain. The brain does not distinguish between physical and emotional threat. When it simulates another's pain, it activates defensive circuits. These circuits evolved to manage danger, not endless witnessing. In early environments, distress usually led to action. The loop closed, a wound was treated, a threat passed. The nervous system returned to baseline. In modern contexts, exposure often lacks resolution. A healthcare worker moves from one suffering patient to another. A social worker hears repeated stories of harm. A teacher supports many distressed children. A person online encounters tragedy after tragedy. Each activates simulation. Few resolve. The loop remains open. Neuroscience shows that repeated activation without recovery alters thresholds. The amygdala becomes more reactive. The prefrontal cortex, which supports regulation, becomes less effective under chronic stress. The system shifts toward vigilance. This creates a paradox. The more you care, the more vulnerable you become to overload. The more vulnerable you become, the less capacity you have to care. This is not because compassion is harmful. It is because the system that supports it is finite. In healthcare, this is well documented. Nurses in high-intensity settings show higher rates of burnout, depression, and physical illness. Therapists working with trauma clients report secondary traumatic stress. Their brains mirror narratives of harm. Their bodies respond. Brain imaging studies show that caregivers exposed to others' pain activate similar networks as those experiencing pain themselves. Without regulation, these networks remain engaged. The body does not know that the pain belongs to someone else. Compassion fatigue is therefore a form of embodied memory. The nervous system carries traces of what it has witnessed. These traces are not stories. They are states. A caregiver may feel uneasy without knowing why. A teacher may feel heavy at the end of the day. A listener may feel drained after hearing difficult news. These are not emotional reactions in the usual sense. They are physiological residues. Recovery requires more than rest. It requires recalibration. Sleep helps. It resets some systems. But it does not fully discharge accumulated arousal. Active regulation is needed. This includes practices that shift the nervous system from threat to safety, slow breathing, gentle movement, time in predictable, low-stimulation environments, contact with non-distressed beings, nature, music with steady rhythm. These inputs provide alternative patterns for mirroring. They tell the body that the environment has changed. In professional settings, structured support is essential. Debriefing, peer connection, supervision, workload limits. Without these, individuals internalize systemic failure. In personal life, boundaries serve the same function. Choosing when to engage, limiting exposure to distressing media, creating spaces that are emotionally neutral. This is not avoidance, it is dosage control. The nervous system needs periods where it is not simulating pain. Understanding the science behind compassion, fatigue reduces shame. It reframes withdrawal as signal. When you feel empty, it is not because you no longer care. It is because your system is saturated. Care requires capacity. Capacity requires recovery. The body cannot remain in readiness indefinitely. From here, the focus shifts toward a newer context where empathy operates constantly: digital life. The next stretch explores how screens change, the way empathy functions, and why emotional load has increased in a connected world. Digital environments place the human nervous system in a context it was never designed for. The brain evolved to read faces across short distances, to hear voices within arm's reach, to respond to the states of a few dozen familiar people. Screens remove these limits. They compress distance. They multiply exposure. They present emotional signals without physical presence, without pacing, without resolution. Yet the mirroring system does not recognize this difference. A face on a screen activates the same circuits as a face in the room. A voice through headphones carries the same emotional information as a voice beside you. A written account of suffering triggers the same internal simulation as a spoken one. The body responds as if the event were nearby. This creates a new emotional ecology. In earlier eras, empathy operated within a narrow radius. You felt the people you lived with. You knew their names. You could act. The loop closed. Even when suffering occurred, it belonged to a known context. Digital life expands that radius to the scale of the planet. You now witness grief from across continents. You observe conflict in real time. You read stories of harm at breakfast. You scroll through outrage at night. Each item arrives without preparation and without conclusion. The nervous system treats every signal as relevant. It does not know that the image is one among thousands. It does not know that the event is distant. It does not know that you cannot intervene. It mirrors. This produces a constant background of low-level arousal. The body remains alert. Muscles carry tension. Attention fragments. Rest becomes shallow. Many people experience this as a sense that the world is always on fire. The feeling is not cognitive, it is physiological. Digital platforms are optimized for engagement. Emotional content spreads more rapidly than neutral content. Anger, fear, and sorrow hold attention. Algorithms amplify them. The nervous system becomes the target. This is not malicious, it is structural. Empathy is leveraged for clicks. The cost is borne by bodies. You may not consciously feel distressed by every post, but each one leaves a trace. Over hours, those traces accumulate. This accumulation does not require personal relevance. A story about strangers can still activate simulation. The body does not check identity. Children and adolescents are especially vulnerable. Their nervous systems are still developing. Their regulatory capacity is limited. They're exposed to adult volumes of emotional content. They may feel overwhelmed without language to explain why. Adults are not immune. They have more experience, but the system is the same. Some respond by scrolling endlessly. The body remains activated. The mind seeks resolution that never comes. Others withdraw completely. They avoid news. They disengage. They protect themselves. Neither response is inherently healthy or unhealthy. Each reflects attempt to regulate. Digital empathy also alters social interaction. Messages lack tone. The mirroring system fills gaps with assumption. A neutral sentence may feel harsh. Delay may feel like rejection. This increases misunderstanding. Video restores some cues, but compresses others. Micro-expressions are lost. Timing is altered. The body struggles to align. Long hours on screens reduce exposure to regulating signals. Physical presence, natural rhythm, shared silence. The nervous system becomes tuned to rapid change. Restlessness increases. This does not mean technology is harmful. It means it interacts with ancient systems in new ways. Adaptation is required. One adaptation is intentional pacing. Not every signal requires engagement. You can choose when to open channels. Another is buffering. After exposure to distressing content, provide the body with different input. Stand, breathe, look at something steady, touch something solid. These actions are not symbolic. They reset sensory balance. Digital empathy can be used well. It can connect people across distance. It can mobilize care. It can share knowledge. But it must be contained. Without containment, empathy becomes ambient noise. The nervous system needs contrast. In physical life, contrast is natural. You leave a stressful place. You walk. You breathe fresh air. You enter a quieter space. Digital life collapses these transitions. A tragic story appears between jokes. A conflict appears between advertisements. The body receives no cue that context has shifted. Creating cues becomes intentional. Turning off notifications, setting times for engagement, ending sessions with grounding activity. These are not habits of avoidance. They are habits of physiology. They tell the body that the environment has changed. Digital empathy is not weaker than physical empathy. It is often stronger because it lacks boundaries. Understanding this restores agency. You cannot change how your nervous system mirrors. You can change what it mirrors and for how long. From here, the focus turns to whether empathy itself can change over time. The next stretch explores whether this capacity can be trained, expanded, or lost. Empathy is not fixed at birth. The nervous system is plastic. It reshapes itself in response to experience throughout life. The circuits that support mirroring, emotional recognition, and regulation strengthen or weaken depending on how they are used. This means empathy can grow. It can also narrow. Neither process is abstract. Both are biological. When a person repeatedly engages with others in attentive, regulated ways, the brain reinforces pathways that link perception to understanding. Faces become more legible. Tone becomes more informative. Subtle shifts become easier to detect. The internal echo becomes clearer. This is why people who work closely with others often become highly attuned. Therapists, teachers, and caregivers develop fine-grained sensitivity. Their nervous systems learn to map small cues. Training enhances this. Programs in counseling and medicine explicitly teach observation of posture, breath, and tone. Students practice noticing without reacting. They learn to separate resonance from response. These practices alter neural patterns. Brain imaging studies show changes in regions associated with attention and emotional processing after compassion training and mindfulness practices. The nervous system becomes more flexible. It can mirror without being overwhelmed. This is training empathy. It does not make a person feel more pain. It makes them better at holding what they feel. At the same time, empathy can diminish. This does not usually happen because someone chooses to stop caring. It happens because the nervous system adapts to overload or threat. Repeated exposure to hostility, danger, or unpredictability can lead the brain to dampen sensitivity. The system learns that openness is costly. It reduces resonance to preserve function. This is common in environments marked by chronic stress, people in conflict zones, individuals in abusive relationships, workers in relentless conditions. The nervous system shifts towards self-protection. Emotional cues become muted. Other states feel distant. This is not apathy. It is shielding. In extreme cases, this becomes emotional numbness. The person reports feeling nothing. This state is often misinterpreted as coldness. In reality, it is exhaustion. Empathy has not vanished. It has gone offline. With safety and time, it can return. This is evident in trauma recovery. As individuals move into stable environments, sensitivity often re-emerges. Emotions return. Others' feelings become noticeable again. This can be surprising and even uncomfortable. The system has to relearn how to regulate. Empathy is therefore not a trait that one either has or lacks. It is a dynamic capacity shaped by context. It grows in safety. It shrinks in danger. It expands with practice. It contracts under threat. Understanding this reduces judgment. A person who seems indifferent may be protecting themselves. A person who feels deeply may have had space to remain open. Both can change. Training empathy does not mean forcing feeling. It means improving awareness and regulation. Practices that support this include attention training, such as mindfulness. These practices increase sensitivity to internal state. They strengthen the prefrontal regions that modulate arousal. They create space between sensation and action. Perspective-taking exercises also alter empathy. Imagining another's experience activates mirroring circuits. Repetition strengthens them. Exposure to diverse stories expands the internal library. The nervous system learns new patterns. However, training without regulation increases risk. Opening the system without teaching boundaries leads to overload. Effective training pairs sensitivity with containment. It teaches how to feel and how to release. This is why many contemplative traditions emphasize both compassion and equanimity. Compassion opens. Equanimity stabilizes. In secular terms, this is empathy and self-regulation. The ability to feel others does not require suffering with them. It requires understanding. Empathy is not martyrdom. It is perception. The nervous system is capable of this balance. It can mirror and remain anchored. It can resonate and return. This capacity is learned through experience. Children who grow up in regulated environments often develop it naturally. Adults can develop it intentionally. The process is gradual. It involves repeated cycles of noticing, regulating, and re-engaging. Over time, the system becomes more flexible. It responds without locking. Empathy is therefore neither fragile nor immutable. It is adaptive. It changes with environment. It changes with practice. What cannot change is its origin. It will always begin in the body. You will always feel before you think. The question is what happens next. From here, the focus turns to what it means to live with this capacity. The final stretch explores what it means to feel together in a world where nervous systems are constantly touching. To live with empathy is to live with a nervous system that remains in contact with the world. It means your body does not exist in isolation. It is always, in small ways, in conversation with other bodies. Every face you see, every voice you hear, every posture you observe leaves a trace. The world does not pass over you. It moves through you. This is not a personality quirk. It is a biological condition of being human. Your nervous system was built for this. It evolved to stay permeable. It evolved to let signals in. It evolved to treat other people as relevant. Living with open nerves means that you do not experience life as a closed system. Your internal state is influenced by what surrounds you. A tense environment makes you tense. A calm presence settles you. A room full of laughter lightens your body. A room full of conflict tightens it. This permeability is what allows connection to feel real. It is why conversation is more than exchange of words. It is why presence matters. It is why isolation feels physically painful. At the same time, open nerves require care. The nervous system cannot remain fully open at all times. It must alternate between engagement and restoration. Without this rhythm, it becomes strained. In earlier human environments, this rhythm was natural. Day and night structured attention. Work and rest alternated. Social interaction was interwoven with solitude. The body had predictable cycles. Modern life disrupts this pattern. Light extends the day. Work follows people home. Digital spaces collapse distance. Emotional input becomes constant. The open nervous system never fully closes. Many people now live in a state of continuous partial activation. They are never in acute danger, but they are rarely fully at ease. The body carries a background hum of alertness. This state does not always feel dramatic. It often feels like subtle tension, like mental noise, like difficulty resting. Living with open nerves in such a world requires intentional rhythm. It requires creating spaces where the nervous system is not asked to mirror. Silence serves this purpose. So does predictable sound. So does nature. So does repetitive motion. Walking, washing dishes, folding fabric. These activities provide stable patterns. The body recognizes safety. They are not distractions. They are regulation. Open nerves also require selective attention. You do not need to mirror everything. You cannot. The nervous system mirrors automatically, but you can choose what you expose it to. This is not denial. It is stewardship. You're responsible for the ecology of your own body. Just as you choose what food enters your system, you can choose what emotional input does. This does not mean avoiding reality. It means pacing contact. You can decide when to engage deeply and when to step back. This is not selfish. It preserves your capacity to care. Living with open nerves also changes how you move through relationships. You begin to notice that your state affects others. Your tension spreads. Your calm spreads. Your attention shapes atmosphere. This awareness invites responsibility, not moral burden, but presence. When you enter a room, you bring a nervous system with you. Others will feel it. They may not know why, but their bodies will respond. This does not mean you must always be calm. It means that your internal state is part of the environment. You become part of the emotional weather. This is true for everyone, whether they notice it or not. Those who are aware can modulate. You can pause before speaking. You can slow your breath. You can soften posture. These small changes shift the field. They are not symbolic. They are physical instructions. Living with open nerves also changes how you interpret others. You realize that when someone is sharp, it is often because their nervous system is strained. When someone withdraws, it may be because their system is saturated. When someone seems indifferent, it may be because they are protecting themselves. This does not excuse harm. It contextualizes it. You see behavior as signal. This perspective reduces reactivity. Instead of mirroring escalation, you can choose regulation. This is not detachment. It is grounded engagement. Open nerves allow you to sense what is happening beneath words. They also allow you to influence without force. This is how safety spreads. A single, regulated body can change a room, not by instruction, by pattern. This is how parents calm children. This is how teachers settle classrooms. This is how leaders stabilize teams. They do not persuade. They provide a different state to mirror. This capacity becomes more important as the world grows louder. In environments saturated with urgency, the ability to carry steadiness becomes rare. It is not glamorous. It is not dramatic. It is not performative. It is quiet. It is the ability to remain anchored while feeling. It is the ability to let the echo pass through without becoming it. This does not mean closing your heart. It means keeping your body as a place that can receive and release. Living with open nerves is therefore not about being endlessly receptive. It is about maintaining permeability without collapse. The nervous system is designed for oscillation. Engage, retreat, mirror, rest, feel, settle. When this rhythm is restored, empathy becomes sustainable. You still feel others. You still register pain. You still resonate. But the echo no longer accumulates into burden. It becomes movement. You feel, and then you return. This return is not abandonment. It is completion. It is what allows the system to stay alive. Empathy without return becomes drowning. Empathy with return becomes connection. The world will not grow quieter. Signals will not diminish. Distress will not disappear. Open nerves will remain part of being human. What can change is how you live with them. You can learn to notice when your body has absorbed something. You can learn to let it pass. You can learn to create spaces where the nervous system is not required to respond. You can also learn to offer a different pattern to others, not by fixing, not by absorbing, but by being present in your own body. This presence is felt. It does not need explanation. It travels the same way a yawn does. It moves through rooms. It moves through voices. It moves through silence. And in a world where so many nervous systems are strained, even a small pocket of steadiness matters. It matters because bodies respond. It matters because alignment happens. It matters because feeling together does not have to mean suffering together. It can mean regulating together. It can mean holding space. It can mean existing in the same room without escalating. Open nerves are not a liability. They are the medium of social life. They allow learning. They allow care. They allow repair. They also require rhythm. As long as you're alive, your nervous system will remain in conversation with others. You will continue to feel what is not yours. The task is not to stop this. The task is to live with it in a way that preserves you, and that process continues. As this long path begins to slow, nothing truly stops. The same nervous system that carried you through these ideas is still doing what it always does. It is noticing rhythm. It is tracking tone. It is responding to presence. Even now, it is aligning with a voice that exists only as vibration and pattern. That is not imagination. It is the same process that lets you feel the mood of a room before anyone speaks. Empathy does not switch off when the words end. It continues quietly in the background of every interaction. It shapes how you walk into a space. It shapes how you listen. It shapes how your body responds before thought has time to organize itself. You will still feel what is not yours. You will still carry echoes. You will still register tension, warmth, unease, relief. What changes is how you hold those signals. They no longer have to become your inner weather. They can remain information. They can arrive and pass. They can be noticed without being absorbed. Your body can feel and still remain your own. This is not a skill of detachment. It is a skill of orientation. You remain open, but you also remain anchored. You allow the echo, but you let it move through rather than settle in place. The world will continue to send signals. Some will be gentle, some will be heavy, some will arrive without warning. You do not need to block them. You do not need to carry them all. You only need to remember that your nervous system is allowed to return. Return to breath. Return to stillness. Return to the simple fact of being in your own body. Empathy connects you to others. Regulation returns you to yourself. Both are necessary. Neither replaces the other. So as this voice fades and the space around you grows quieter, nothing needs to resolve. There is no conclusion required. There is only the steady continuation of sensation, awareness, and rest. Your body knows how to do this. It has been doing it since the beginning. You can let the nervous system soften now. You can allow the echoes to quiet. You can remain open without effort. Feeling together does not end here. It simply slows.